All right, welcome everyone. I call the September 15, 2021 Planning Commission meeting to order. The main purpose of tonight's meeting is a study session on the transfer of development rights in Canyon Park. Before we move on to the agenda items, I'd like to acknowledge our remote meeting format. As with our previous meetings, during this meeting, the chat and question functions will not be available to use to ensure compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act. We have a public comment agenda item at the beginning of the meeting. This time is for comments on issues not on tonight's agenda. We will also welcome public testimony. Nope, there's no public hearing. Didn't edit that out. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes during the public comment period. Under Governor Inslee's Proclamation 20-28 regarding open public meetings, this meeting will be held remotely. Public comment will be allowed both in writing and orally. The Imagine Bothell notice, city website, and tonight's agenda all provided information to the public for providing comments. People wishing to comment were instructed to notify staff or provide written comments by 3 p.m. today. The video of this meeting will be streamed live as well as recorded and available for later viewing on the city's YouTube channel. The call-in number was provided on the meeting agenda for members of the public who wish to call in by phone to listen live to the meeting. For phone-in callers, during staff presentations, staff will make every effort to specify which material they are referencing so everyone can follow along. Those who provided advance notice are able to make comments under the audience comment portion of the meeting. Email was encouraged as well and will be acknowledged. At this point, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the attendance of the commissioners. We have Commissioner Dodd.
Present.
Commissioner Westerbeck. I see him. He's muted.
Present.
Commissioner Curd, but Vice Chair.
Here.
Commissioner Robson.
Present.
Commissioner Aldorks and Cat.
I am present. Thank you.
And Commissioner Gustafson.
Here.
In addition, Community Development Director Michael Cotterman and Senior Planner Nathan Lamb are in attendance. So lastly, before we begin, I'd like to reiterate some meeting guidelines for all meeting attendees. Please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. Mute your microphone when not speaking and unmute when you want to speak. If you're also streaming the live video feed, please turn the sound off as there is a delay. For commissioners, during specific breaks in the presentation, I'll call on members who wish to speak or ask a question. If you want to speak, please indicate this by holding up yellow cards or otherwise getting my attention. And sometimes with the ribbon, it is tough to see people. I will attempt to scroll back and forth to see if folks want to speak. I will call on you when I recognize you, and this will avoid the problem of having 2 people speak at the same time. Please identify yourself before you ask a question, make a motion, second a motion, or participate in debate. And please mute your microphone when not speaking. So the first item on the agenda is public comment. In speaking with Governor Jay Inslee's Emergency Proclamation 20-28 regarding public gatherings and open public meetings, the city has accepted public comment in writing as well as accepted sign-up sheets for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to staff no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all commissioners and are part of the record, although we have not seen any. And this time is for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Director Cotterman, please let us know if there are any comments received.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I almost forgot to unmute my microphone. So you'll get another opportunity to remind me later, I'm sure. Staff did not receive any written comments or requests to speak this evening. And as I noted, we do have one attendee in the attendee room. So I will ask him again if he would like to speak. So Mr. Sjogren, this would be the opportunity to provide public comment to the Planning Commission if you so desire. Would you like to speak at this time?
The only thing I would like to add, reviewing your material, COVID has changed our world and affected our traffic patterns and what we do drastically. And I want to make sure that you all consider that in any future planning, because it's going to be here as long as we live. And I speak as a bus driver for North Shore School District. I drive every day on our streets, and I'm seeing a drastic change because of COVID. And we need to consider that in our options for any other future medical situations. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Sjogren. I would assume there are no other comments since no one else is on the line.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. We have no one else in the attendee room.
All right, then with that, we will close the public comment item on the agenda and move on to the approval of the minutes. We have before us the minutes of the July 7th meeting. Yes, it's been over 2 months since we've met. And so is there a motion to approve those minutes? Commissioner Dodd.
I move to approve the July 7th minutes as presented.
All right. Is there a second to those minutes? Commissioner Curd.
I second.
All right. The motion has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion around the minutes? Any needed modifications? Looking across the screen, I do not see any commissioners indicating a need to discuss or modify. So with that, all in favor of approval of the minutes, please indicate. And I see all 7 hands up, so we do have unanimous approval of the minutes. Thank you all. Moving on to new business. Dr. Cotterman, do we have any new business before us?
We do not, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. On to the study session. Senior
believe you
Planner
have-
Lamb, would you like to
I
lead us
believe you
through
have
this item?
Mr. Chair, I believe Commissioner Gustafson has her
Oh.
hand raised.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director. Sarah Gustafson here. I would like to ask some questions about the recent social media guidelines provided by the city attorney, and I would like to check when a good time to discuss those would be.
We did receive that, and we've asked for some feedback from the city attorney's office, and we've had some conversation. We're still trying to figure out the best way to convey that. I would point out those are guidelines. They're generally for information and use, as you see fit. But we'll see if there's any more direction that we need to get from the city attorney's office on that. And if so, we will bring that back to the planning commission at a future meeting.
Great, thank you.
Do you have any specific comments, Commissioner Gustafson?
Thanks. Yes, I do. I wanted to clarify whether the suggested guidelines apply to official conduct of city business or to any presence of commissioners on social media, even if it's personal. So I wanted to see where that line would be.
That's a great question. I think that's where the challenge is sometimes that line is not clear. So that's why I'm hoping we can get a little bit more guidance from the city attorney's office.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yeah, I just wanted to add for Commissioner Gustafson. So I had a question around that before these guidelines. It was when I first joined the commission, and I was able to do a quick Zoom call with Mr. Byrne and with Director Cotterman just to ask my questions. So I think after they get back to you on your questions, if there's still more, you might be able to have like a similar conversation. So that's probably an option.
Great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So am I to understand that we may be hearing later from the attorney on this, Director Cotterman?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. I think that would be useful.
Yeah, my thought was it might be helpful just to have him come and speak to the commission as a whole and try to answer any questions that anybody might have, because it is one of those areas is constantly evolving, as is the social media. And I know we've had several conversations with this group individually and as a group about that and different boundaries and cautions as you know, as we all interact through social media and everything else. So we just want to make sure we're being as diligent as we can be in that area.
I'm fairly certain that the rules around open public meetings were established before social media was anywhere near the point it is now. So we are kind of feeling our way through this, but want to avoid any problems.
And court cases are always changing the landscape a little bit in terms of what is and is not allowed, or is not subject to public disclosure, or what does and doesn't qualify as city business, and that type of thing. So that's where some of those gray areas arise. And frankly, I don't have a good answer to some of those questions either.
Okay. So be careful out there.
Always err on the side of caution. That's the general rule of thumb.
All right, so this is the new business item. I did not hear any other new business. Any other commissioners have questions around new business? Seeing none, then Senior Planner Lamb, you're on now.
All right, let me get my screen pulled up here. And you all should be able to see the presentation and not my notes, correct?
Looking good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so yeah, nice to see you all again. It sounds like you all enjoyed your time away, and so I guess it's back to business. But bringing you something that we are excited about, that we've just started working on a couple months ago, and that is transfer of development rights in Canyon Park. This is stemming from an earlier effort from, I guess, the end of 2020, when you all adopted the Canyon Park Plan and accompanying development regulations. You left a placeholder in the development regulations and now code for transfer of development rights provisions. And so that's what we're doing, is we're circling back around as part of implementation of the plan. And so, as I mentioned, it's only been a few months since we started working on this with Burke, consultant that we work with typically for projects like this. And it made sense since they had a hand in the sub-area plan. And also some other project partners like Sound Transit as their bus-based north facility. Bus maintenance facility is sort of a case study that's helping us sort of parameterize the potential TDR program, and also Arch, a regional coalition for affordable housing. And we'll talk about how they're helping along the way. So with that, we'll jump into it, and I'll have a place at the end for questions that you might have. So along the way, we're going to sort of ground ourselves in policy that you all worked on and getting adopted to make sure we're actually implementing policy that we planned for and implementing the plan that was adopted. And so we're going to start off here with one of the policy recommendations that speaks specifically to TDR. And it said that some land uses may not be capable of meeting minimum development levels. And to meet the Puget Sound Regional Council Regional Growth Center framework, Bothell should create an activity unit TDR program. And we're going to break that down a little bit more for our newer members, newer commissioners, and viewers as we go along. And then there were 3 specific action items to follow up with on that policy, which was establishing receiving sites in the high and medium density land use designations as eligible to receive activity unit credits, create a program where the city is the holder and distributor of TDR credits, and encourage these credits to be used to assist affordable housing and affordable commercial space objectives. So again, we're going to sort of highlight how we're working to implement and achieve those action items. But first, before we get too far, we thought it might be helpful to give a simple TDR definition for viewers that might not know what TDR is, and we're not using it as it's conventionally used. It's sort of a custom approach to TDR, but its simple distilled down definition is it's a market-based land use tool for helping implement a jurisdiction's growth policies. And developers in sending areas transfer credits representing the land's development potential to developers in receiving areas. And so on the left side here, you have your conventional form of transfer of development rights, which is, typically a jurisdiction will have some sort of growth management policy where they have a urban growth area, an urban growth boundary, and they want to conserve maybe agricultural land or environmentally or ecologically sensitive land outside of those boundaries or urban growth areas. And so what they'll do is they'll provide a system for transferring potential development that's allowed in those zones where they want to conserve land into areas where the city wants to see growth. And so we're essentially just taking that concept and applying it to a regional growth center. We mentioned that the framework for PSRC's requirements for activity units in regional growth centers, and we've sort of got to maintain a density of activity units, which is jobs and housing. And so what we're doing is with this diagram on the right, this looks like could be a public or institutional building. We're simply saying that the potential development that wasn't used or the development that was underutilized, we're going to create a system to transfer that elsewhere into particular receiving areas within the regional growth center, so that we can retain that potential jobs and household number. And so we're going to break that down a little bit more too in an analysis section. But another definition we wanted to provide, because we're going to refer to it a lot, is transit-oriented development for our viewers. And this essentially just is another land use tool that focuses urban growth around transit facilities and leverages transit investments to produce regional local benefits, such as increases in transit ridership, development of housing, walkable communities, and improve access to jobs and economic opportunities. And how we see that play out is sort of a top-down approach from the state down to the region and county and local jurisdictional level. This is a map that the commission is used to seeing, but it just shows the regional growth centers and high capacity transit stations in the area. And those high capacity transit stations are just areas that are within a half mile of existing or planned transit stations. And then of course, regional growth centers in that light blue, in those light blue dots there, of which, we have a regional growth center in Canyon Park. And so, what you would see with transit-oriented development is a greater density of jobs and housing sort of along these corridors that you see along our major interstates and highways, because it's, helpful for getting people more accessibility to jobs and economic opportunity, like we saw on that last slide. And it's also a good growth management tool to prevent sprawl, perhaps out in the east and southward in our county. So we just want to make sure that all of these principles align. And along those lines, one other definition we wanted to provide, and this is sort of a lens that we're using collaboratively with Sound Transit and our consultant, and arch along the way as we shape this program is the equitable transit-oriented development policy that Sound Transit adopted by resolution for all of their TOD-related projects that have to do with surplus property that they dispose of. And essentially what they did is they said they're going to, whatever work they do is going to support equitable transit communities that promote local community and economic development by providing housing types at a range of densities and affordability levels, commercial and retail spaces, community service and other amenities integrated into safe and walkable neighborhoods. So that's sort of our overarching lens that we're keeping in the back of our minds as we move forward. Okay, earlier I mentioned the Bus Base North Maintenance Facility. This is Sound Transit's, one of their projects that's part of their system expansion, ST3, I believe is what it's called. And it's a large project made up of, I guess, smaller projects that make up its whole I-405 bus rapid transit being included. So on the left there, you see that BRT is coming up 405 through Canyon Park as a major station area. And on the right, you should have seen this in your packets, but that is the 12.5 acre site in North Canyon Park that Sound Transit has proposed as their preferred location for that facility. It's classified as an essential public facility, and this is the definition that the revised Code of Washington gives for essential public facilities. They are land uses that are typically difficult to cite, such as airports and regional transit authority facilities, state educational, state, local, and correctional institutions, solid waste, substance abuse, mental health, and group home facilities. So obviously we need places to site these and we want to support them where they make sense. But the issue that's come up is that essential public facilities, especially like in a regional growth center, tend to be like lower density. And in this particular case, moving into more of the analysis of formulating a TDR program, is they're coming in under what we're requiring as a minimum development level on that parcel in that zone. And so because they're coming short of what's expected in that zone, it's underutilizing the space, and we could be losing potential jobs and households, like I mentioned earlier. Here's just a couple definitions. Again, I'm a little redundant here, so I apologize. But for the viewers who might not know, activity units are a measurement from PSRC that just combines the number of jobs and population, and it's a way to measure activity in a particular area. And then we're going to talk about floor area ratio. The commission will know this, but for our viewers, the floor area ratio is the floor area of all buildings on a lot divided by the area of that lot. And I've got an example here on the right. And then if you will follow my cursor, you'll see that under the first line in the table here, which are part of the Canyon Park development regulations, you have your intensities. And we have a minimum floor area ratio set for each zone. Okay, so these are the expected FARs for each zone. And so where that leads us is, Bus Base North is in the EL zone, and their expectation is a 0.4 FAR. And not that we're doing any site planning tonight, but just for illustrative purposes, this is a preliminary site plan shown on the right that they've submitted to us. It does show the entire 12.5 acre lot, some parking area here in the blue, but they're building in this bolder red line is the total building area. And so when we start to talk about retaining activity units capacity, we're simply just taking our required FAR in this equation down here, which is 0.4. And let me just back up because I should have mentioned that these minimum development requirements are sort of predicated on building typologies and how many jobs and households they potentially could provide. And so that's why you all set those minimum development levels. And so it's been calculated that a 0.4 FAR yields a potential 625 jobs. And, we've got Bus Base North coming in at 0.13 FAR, and that's yielding about 250 jobs. But what happens is we've got a surplus FAR of about 0.27, which is about 375 jobs that could have gone there, but wouldn't if we, permit them building this facility as proposed, underutilizing the potential to accommodate more activity units. Okay, so getting closer to the end here. So when we talk about how transfer of development rights credits can be used and what they can be used for, we have a framework that we're working within specifically for regional transit authorities like Sound Transit. The state has actually created some parameters in the revised Code of Washington under the TOD strategy system plan. And it's called the 80-80 rule. And basically what it says is that at least 80% of surplus property suitable for housing must be made available to qualified entities. And qualified entities in this case means a local government, housing authority, or nonprofit developer. So the city does actually qualify as a qualified entity, which is good because that achieves one of those action items that we looked at at the beginning of the presentation. Checks that box. The next point is that at least 80% of the housing must be affordable to households earning 80% or less of the area median income. And so that actually helps us check that box for equitable TOD and making sure we're providing housing at different affordability levels in Canyon Park close to transit. And finally, if TDR credits are transferred and sold, the proceeds must be used to construct affordable housing within half a mile of a light rail or other transit station. Okay, we obviously don't have light rail coming through Canyon Park, but we do have BRT coming through it. And so we will be able to build affordable housing in some of these potential receiving sites that the consultant has identified in the red in this map here. Obviously, you see Bus Base North as the sending site. And the analysis that they're doing right now is to determine which of these super blocks that you see listed, I believe there's 16 of them, would be most appropriate to be receiving areas and could take on additional growth, or could accommodate additional growth rather. More on affordable housing, again, to ground ourselves in policy that we have already adopted in the Canyon Park plan. Towards the end of the plan, there are some implementation directives in a short, mid, and long-term phases. In the short-term implementation phase from 2020 to 2025, it says to actively seek TOD partners to achieve desired development, for example, public gathering places, excellent transit access, and affordable housing. And so I think that's what we're trying to achieve here and what we're doing. I mentioned earlier, we want to partner with Arch. They will be reviewing the materials that the consultant submits to the city with us, and we hope to have them help us administer a TDR program at some point. They're not a qualified entity, so they can't hold the credits themselves, but they can be a strategic partner for us. Okay, and so we're at our final slide here, and the project timeline was listed in more detail in your packet. So this is the short version of it, and what the next steps are and role is for the Planning Commission. So from now until the end of the year, the consultant is working on assessment and recommendations. And so what they're going to do is provide input on TDR program framework, policies, and recommended code amendment language. And they're going to submit that hopefully by the end of the year in a presentation and report form to all of us. And it'll be up to the Planning Commission to sort of mull over those and modify them if necessary. And then we go into the new year here. We've got this is not my dog, but a very cute dog nonetheless. And he's welcoming us into a happy new year with this little hat there. And we anticipate that from January to May is when you all would hold a public hearing, maybe more than one, depending on how you might want to augment the program and public input, and then make a final recommendation to City Council to amend the Bothell Municipal Code, Section 12.48.180, which is the placeholder in the Canyon Park Development Regulations. So we have this project wrapping up in spring, early summer of next year. And so with that, I'll try to answer any questions that you might have. And as I mentioned, this was more of the program and policy discussion. We haven't seen a lot of the analysis that's been being done, but we expect to have a draft report at the end of September. So we'll be coming back to you a few more times, of course, before the end of the year to share that with you. So, yep, thank you.
Well, thank you, Senior Planner Lamb. And I have to apologize. I was having some connectivity issues there and things were jumping in and out. I missed a couple of slides, but I'm sure the rest of the commissioners caught everything and will followed along very well. So with that, commissioners, you have some questions for Senior Planner Lamb. Commissioner Alders.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senior Planner Lamb. That was a really good presentation, and I really appreciated that you were able to define some terms for the public too, as we get more people engaging and paying attention to the decisions we're making here, or the advice we're giving, right? And so my question for you is about the 80-80-80 rule. And so I recognize that the third 80 in that comes from 80% AMI. Is that an adjustable number? And can there be, or will there be opportunities in the future to change that number to less than 80? So, when we're talking about affordability, are we able to reach deeper levels of affordability through this process? And what would it look like to change that third 80 in that rule?
Yeah, I'll give that a shot and let Director Cotterman back me up if I'm missing something. That's an excellent question. We actually hadn't. I'm not sure that we considered that at this point yet, but I think what we could do is include that in sort of the menu list of items that we asked the consultant to look at for us. If I can remember off the top of my head, I don't remember any limiting language in that revised Code of Washington that says you can adjust it and that it has to be 80. In fact, I think it does say minimum 80. And so that almost seems like it certainly could be adjusted, but I don't want to, of course, say it can without knowing first that it can't. So I don't know if Director Cotterman has any other insight on that to add, but
Just to reinforce, I think what you had said, that is that's an upper limit. So it says no more than 80% of AMI. So it can be less than that. We can set it at something less than that, and we will certainly strive to get deeper affordability if we can. As far as changing the 80-80-80 rule, if our goal is to decrease the AMI, then we don't need to do that. But to change that would require a change in state law. That's not something that that either Sound Transit or the city has any authority to change on its own.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senior Planner Lamb, for especially the visuals in that presentation. My question is, when a developer buys a credit, do they have to also create the affordable housing that meets the 80-80-80 rule? Or is it that they just buy the credit, give the money to the city, and then the city has to construct the housing that meets the 80-80-80 rule?
I think it could be either or. The city could, I think, I don't want to misspeak here, but so the city would be the holder of the credits. So Sound Transit would, I think the preferred method is to transmit the credits to us once they're valued for that surplus property. And then, a developer that qualifies would be, we would transmit those credits to them. And I would think as part of like a development agreement in the way we administer the program, that they would have to agree to meet that minimum, 80% affordable housing and 80% AMI level. And again, I'll let Director Cotterman pop in if I overlooked anything, but I think that's the preferred method at this point in time. And that can certainly change depending on more conversation that we all have in the coming months.
Mr. Lamb is correct about that. The intent is that those credits would be used to create affordable housing. But one of the options that could be available is to sell those credits to a developer that wouldn't necessarily provide the affordable housing, but that money would then have to go toward affordable housing. So, and that is one of the reasons that we're talking about the 80-80-80 rule, is Sound Transit is bound by that requirement under state law. So because they're giving the city the credits, normally the holder of that extra development potential would sell those development credits to the receiving site. There would be money exchanged for that. In this case, we're asking Sound Transit not to get any money for themselves for this, but to donate those credits to the city so that we can then use those to either get that affordable housing or sell those credits and use the funds for affordable housing. So the answer is, as Mr. Lamb said, it's an either or. It could be either or of those situations. And that's part of what we're asking the consultants to determine through this analysis that they're doing through the rest of this year, is how do we make those different approaches work? Do they both work? And if so, how do we make sure we get the most benefit out of it?
Commissioner Westerbeck.
Thank you. I also appreciate the presentation, Senior Planner Lamb. That was cleared up. It was very clear and helped me understand some of the things in the packet better as well. It's a great concept, and I'm trying to understand, are these credits, say a developer buys them, they've already got land, and they can go, say, 3 stories or certain FAR. Does this allow them, is this like a bonus that they're buying and they have to do the 80-80-80? Because otherwise, if they've got a piece of land and they can already develop it, I'm trying to understand the incentives for buying the credits. Because it's, I've heard of the concept before. I'm just trying to make sure I understand the mechanics of it.
Yeah, we're getting into a little bit more of the technical side, and I think we're leaning heavily on Burke to work that out for us. But I think you're right in thinking sort of more of that. It's almost like a bonus. If I recall from the development regulations, I think that was probably one of the main reasons why the commission and city council at the time didn't put any limits on maximum FAR, is because we knew that we were going to be coming back with probable TDR provisions and other incentives for bonus FAR that we've discussed earlier this year. And so I think in that sense, yeah, they've got their minimum that they need to meet. And yeah, I think we've yet to see how that's going to work out. The consultant is working on a pro forma analysis for those receiving areas. So I'd like to get back to you with more information.
Oh, sure.
And
well, that makes sense. They're still figuring it out. Okay.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then defer again to Director Cotterman if I missed.
Can I ask a quick follow-up, if that's okay?
Sure.
And I know we're looking at receivership areas all around Canyon Park. Are these going to be limited to Canyon Park, or is it, say, a developer's like, oh, I've got some property down in another part of Bothell downtown or something? Are they going to be able to use it there, or is it going to have to stay in a certain district?
At least for now, it's supposed to stay in the regional growth center.
Okay, that makes sense.
The program could be replicated later. I think once we get to that point, we can. And I should have mentioned earlier, I did forget to mention that the reason why Bus Base North is a good case study is because it's only for essential public facilities to start out with, but certainly it could be expanded if it's successful at a later date. So
makes sense. Thank you.
Commissioner Curd.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Senior Planner Lamb. That was very enlightening. My experience with TDR so far has only been in Snohomish County, where the program is really meant as more of like a conservation type thing that you were alluding to at the beginning. So this is sort of an unusual approach to TDR in protecting density. And we all are aware of the patchwork quilt of density currently in Canyon Park. And part of the reason that we've spent so much time on the sub-area plan and the regional growth center is to weave a rich tapestry of density and have a more urban form of Canyon Park that works as a cohesive unit. And so one of the things that I kind of have some early thoughts on in big picture thoughts about TDR is that I'm concerned that relying too heavily on TDR in general can undermine some of the benefits of this minimum density requirements across the board. Not saying that, we're doing this for one project, but if it's successful and we apply it elsewhere and we allow it elsewhere, it's really critical that we don't undermine the authority that we and council have placed on those minimum density requirements, because they're really necessary for creating that urban fabric. And also they're helpful for other reasons too, to help sustain local areas of the neighborhood and have catchment areas for businesses and other reasons. So I think one of the things that I'm going to be looking for is to see what a minimum sending unit or sending credit is going to be for a TDR program. If everybody is able to send out their 0.5, 0.05 or 0.1 units to other areas, that can start to add up and sort of degrade the urban fabric that we want with those minimum densities. So that was something that I kind of noticed early on, and I was wondering if you had thought about that too, or how you're looking to sort of balance our minimums and being flexible with TDR. So I want to hear any of your thoughts, or if that's even on your radar yet.
Yeah, that's certainly a sentiment that we can take forward. And I think I don't want to speak for Director Cotterman, but sort of and this predates me a little bit, but from what I can gather, the genesis of this with the Sound Transit's bus-based north facility being chosen, the location being chosen in Canyon Park. One of the leverage points for this, for help getting into a contract with Sound Transit and Burke and having them help us fund the study for a feasibility of TDR was sort of predicated on making sure they somehow meet that minimum development level and that we don't lose that potential for activity units that I think you were talking about that sort of will help build that urban fabric. And so I think what we can do is communicate that with the consultant and Sound Transit as we go along here and make sure that, maybe we have other protections in place when we go to administer the program. So that there's not really any opportunity for that to happen. And I'll let Director Cotterman weigh in again too.
I'll just elaborate on what Mr. Lamb said because he summarized it very well. But as he mentioned, a lot of the discussion about this predates his time with the city. So we have had some early discussions about this when we were first approaching Sound Transit. With the possibility of doing this in lieu of them not being able to build to that minimum FAR. And you're absolutely right. We don't want this being used extensively. And that's why from the very beginning, we have said we're going to limit this. First, we thought about limiting it just to the Sound Transit project. And then we thought, well, we probably need to think a little bit broader than that. Hopefully, we won't have a lot of these essential public facilities in the Regional Growth Center. But if we do, we want to have a mechanism in place that would also be able to apply to them because those are the ones most likely to find themselves in this situation. Private development, employment activity, residential development, we really don't want to allow this for those types of uses because that's where, as you were saying, Commissioner Curd, that's where we want to see the intensity. We want to make sure that occurs. So we did not think about setting a minimum amount of FAR for transfer. So I think that's, as Mr. Lamb said, we'll convey that to the consultants, something to consider if we need to do that. And if so, what that number would be. We hadn't gotten that specific, but it's certainly worth looking into a little bit more. And just again, bringing this back to the reason we're doing this, as Mr. Lamb said, Commissioner Westerbeck brought up the question about, can we go outside the Regional Growth Center? And the answer is no. We want to, the whole reason we set this up is so that we can make sure that we can demonstrate to the Puget Sound Regional Council that we are retaining the capacity for the Regional Growth Center that we need to demonstrate that we have. I hope that answers your question. I think I probably answered a few more questions than were asked there.
It does. Thank you. I think I have another question about that, but I know that other commissioners haven't spoken, so I'll defer to them.
Other commissioner questions, comments? Commissioner Gustafson.
Sarah Gustafson here. I think my question is very similar to the other commissioners. It's concerned whether any developers would actually buy the credits. It might be difficult for them to already meet the minimum FAR requirements in Canyon Park, and they might not want to actually have that bonus, especially if it comes with an affordable housing requirement. So I think what I'd like to understand more about is for Burke to provide maybe a market analysis with pricing of a credit. What is the benefit that they would get? Maybe just a scenario saying they would pay $200,000 and get this much FAR over this much square footage. And with that, I do recognize that this is a completely new program and we're just at the genesis of it. So I really appreciate the patience with all of our questions and concerns. So thank you.
They're all very good questions, and many of the questions we've been asking since we started discussing this with Sound Transit as well. In fact, that was one of the biggest questions Sound Transit has. If we do a TDR program, is anyone going to buy the credits? And so that is something that Burke is taking a look at. The reason we're doing this in 2 phases is first to determine the feasibility and make sure that if we put this program in place, that we'll actually do what it's intended to do. So I don't know if I don't recall from the scope if they're doing a market study, but they are looking at how these credits would be used. And they wouldn't be used by an applicant that's meeting the minimum FAR. They would be used most likely by an applicant that's using the maximum FAR and then wanting to go beyond that. Because they can already do anything between the minimum and the maximum without any additional credits. So we are plowing new ground here to a certain extent. This is, as Mr. Lamb said in his presentation, this is not the traditional approach to TDR. We're breaking new ground. We're being innovative here. We hope.
So, other commissioner comments, questions? I've got a few things. First of all, kind of leveraging off Dr. Cotterman's earlier comments in response to Commissioner Kurd's concerns, I'd urge that at least in this phase of the consideration of the program, that it do be limited to essential public facilities. That really puts some bounds around it and prevents Commissioner Kurd's concern about undercutting some of the other goals of the program. So I'd suggest we go there. There was a reference in the materials to also affordable commercial space. Is that correct? How does the 80% AMI work with that?
I'll let Mr. Lamb take a first stab at that. He's been involved
I'm
in
okay
more
to
of
be
those
confused
discussions
there.
than I have.
Oh, well, we'll see how this goes. Another thing that's still being worked out and a question that we had, and you're right, the one of those action items in the policy that we saw in the beginning of the presentation was for affordable commercial space. And so we have, I think, sort of like a half answer at this point that they could be used to eventually get affordable commercial space. But affordable commercial space, as we've learned also in the meantime, since we visited you with the bonus FAR incentives, is a whole beast of its own and a whole program that would need to be administered in a different way. Although a TDR program those two programs could eventually complement each other. But it is something that we are looking at, and I believe we will have a recommendation from the consultant in Sound Transit on how to get there. I think where we're getting stuck right now is interpreting the RCWs. And so once we get past that, I think we can have some consensus and, and just as if it's any consolation, if this program can't get us to affordable commercial, we are looking at it outside of TDR as part of that bonus FAR incentive that we spoke about. Must have been when I first started months and months ago. So we're making progress slowly but surely. So
Make months and months ago sound like a long time ago.
COVID months are long. But anyway,
just to add on to that, if I could, Mr. Chair, to give you a specific example, the limitation comes from the 8088 rule in the RCWs and how those basically we're talking about surplus. So even though it's not surplus land, it's surplus capacity. That if we treat it as such, then it is restricted by the requirements of the RCW. So what Mr. Lammer was referring to in terms of commercial spaces, we've asked the question of Sound Transit, can we do this? And their answer was maybe. So we're trying to get better clarification on that. They're not opposed to the idea, but they have to comply with the state law, as do we if they grant those credits to the city. So what might work, and this is something that Burke is looking into as a specific example, is if the city use those credits to gain affordable commercial space from a developer, we would sell those credits to the developer in order to get that. So we might discount the value of that in order to provide that incentive. Then we would use the funds from that. Those funds would then have to go toward affordable housing under the 80-80-80 rule. That's how we think we understand it, but that's what we're trying to get some clarification on. And then if we can do that, is that going to be enough of an incentive to get it? So, and as Mr. Lamb said, if we can't get it this way, we're looking at it through the other mechanism that we have, the bonus incentive program.
Okay. Thank you. That is significant here because one of the target areas for potential transfer of these development rights is what I'll call the Thrasher's Corner area, where under other earlier discussions, we did note there are a number of small businesses that really need affordable space.
Yes.
So I'd hate to push development into that area, raise the prices and lose some of those community businesses. So let's keep that in mind. My final question or comment is looking at the Sound Transit policies, it talks about the credits must be utilized within 10 years. Any concerns there? Because development of some of these areas may lag. I hate to lose those. Is there a process for extending them, or will we look for a process to extend the credits if not utilized within 10 years?
And that has not come up so far. And we'll take a closer look at that because it depends on how that's meant to be applied. If we hold the credits, the 10 years may not apply.
Okay.
So it may be that if we grant those credits to someone, they have to use them within 10 years or the credits come back. I'm not sure about that. That's something we want to get clarification on. Because if it is the former, then yes, we do want to make sure that we look for some provisions to allow an extension of the life of those credits.
Because we are looking at a long-term plan, and some of those areas, I don't see, there's no development proposal on the table that I'm aware of within the near term. So that might be a challenge, the 10-year time frame. Maybe. Just don't want to lose something.
No, that's the very, very good point. Yeah, we don't either.
That's all that I had. Any other commissioner comments or questions on this? Commissioner Curd.
Thank you. And thanks also for that comment about timing. That was reading through, that was also one of my questions. So I'm very keen to hear feedback on that when you get it. My question is about just kind of spiraling back a little bit. The city as the owner of this program and whether that causes any transparency issues, even as we limit this program to essential public facilities. I can think of one essential public facility in the Canyon Park subarea that the city just undertook and would be, if it wasn't vested, would be subject to these regulations, which would be the fire station. Mm-hmm. And so how do we make sure that the city is being transparent with how much sending credits an essential public facility, which is being built by the city, is going into the city's transfer of development rights bank in order to be sold to developers, especially with the history that the city has with transparency around development rights. I think that it warrants further discussion. I know that we're kind of boxed in because we can't use Arch and we can't use another public agency. And so it's pretty much only the city that can host this process. But I'm wondering what sort of transparency measures we can institute just to make sure that everything is super above the board and that there's no question of ethics whatsoever when we limit these to essential public facilities?
That's a great question, and frankly, a scenario I had not anticipated, because I really don't expect we'll have a lot of essential public facilities going into the regional growth center. The fire station is in the regional growth center, I believe. It's not the same as the sub area, but I'm pretty sure it's still in the regional growth center. I have not looked at whether it would meet the minimum FAR. I suspect it probably does, given the size of that parcel. But we can take a look at that as just as an example and see if it didn't, for example, how would that work? And we can talk to the consultants about that. As far as the transparency of the process, anytime we do a public project, it's public, it's open, all the books are open, it's a transparent process. So I think that's the safeguard that we have. As far as who else could hold the credits, Sound Transit could hold the credits, but the city would still be the ones, making sure that those credits are used the way that we intend them to be. So you're right, it's a bit of a box. We'll look into that some more.
Commissioner Gustafson, then Commissioner Alders.
Maybe Commissioner Aldrich should speak first because I just asked a bunch of questions.
Okay. Commissioner Alders.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Gustafson. This is a question for Senior Planner Lamb. Could you go back to the slide that showed the FAR for the proposed site? And I know that you said it wasn't official, but just as a visual reference for my real question. And my real question is, previously in the commission, didn't we discuss that this bus location would be would possibly not fulfill FAR, and so they were talking about public space or like doing a trade-off, an incentive to provide some kind of public amenity that would be a public space? And is this something that would give them the option between the public space incentive or the TDR, or could it be possible for both?
And while Mr. Lamb's looking for that, I know you directed the question to Mr. Lamb, Commissioner Aldrich, but I'd like to respond to that if I could, because I think a lot of that also predates his time with the city. So the discussion, as I recall, when you're talking, what you're talking about, that discussion, I believe, had more to do with the through block connections than with the minimum FAR. I think we talked about some trade-offs, if they were not able to provide all the through block connections or all of the public space that's also required by the code, that there may be some ways that we could do some trade-offs there. But as far as the minimum FAR, that part, because I've had all those discussions with Sound Transit, that part has never been negotiable. They need to provide some way to transfer that that capacity elsewhere within the regional growth center. So I don't know if that answers all of your question or if that helps to clarify things.
I don't think so, but I appreciate the clarity on that. I guess my question is that obviously they cannot go below the minimum, but are we able to split the surplus to say some of that could become a TDR and some of that could become the incentive for public space?
And the answer to that is no, because we need all of that capacity that they're not using to get to the minimum. So we would be diluting the capacity of the entire regional growth center if we didn't account for all of those activity units.
Okay.
There are other ways that we can try to leverage additional public open space, but this would not be the mechanism for that.
And I think that's why I wanted to look at this visual, because if there is place on the land here that could provide public open space, are we able to do TDR and public open space because there is space available for perhaps a rain garden or a sculpture park or those kinds of things? Because they're not using, they're not meeting the minimum.
We will definitely look at public space as part of the site plan review for the project. That'll be a separate discussion from the TDR.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So it sounds like there is a chance of yes, both, but they would be separate discussions.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you for the clarification. I'm sorry, it was a little thorny to get there.
No, it's okay. That's how we figure things out.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Sarah Gustafson here. Thanks, Chair. I am curious about the types of city-owned affordable housing that the credit revenues could be applied to. I'm wondering if we have any existing projects. And I also know that the city approved a health to housing
Resolution.
Thank you, last night that says that maybe the city would be open to having a hotel for the houseless in Bothell, and I don't know if the credits could be applied there.
So the way that we anticipate the credits could work would be one of two ways. One would be that the credits would be available to a developer that would get be able to build additional dwelling units and provide, provide those as affordable units as part of their development. The second would be if we sold those credits, then those funds would go toward affordable housing. The city doesn't own any affordable housing. We're not a developer. We don't have a housing authority. We don't do housing. All of our affordable housing, that type of a housing program, is done through Arch. And typically what we do is we then provide those funds through Arch to a developer who would be building affordable housing, most likely within the city of Bothell, but not necessarily.
Commissioner Dodd.
I have kind of a follow-up question. It's a little tangential, so I apologize, but I have followed the Bothell United Methodist proposed project that they're working on. Would those funds be able to support a project like theirs, where they want to build a community space and some affordable housing in downtown?
Potentially, yeah, they could seek funding. If it's an affordable housing project, they could seek funding through Arch.
Okay, thank
And
you.
most likely would, because affordable housing projects generally need funding from multiple sources in order to be successful.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Other commissioner questions, comments for Senior Planner Lamb or Director Cotterman on this item?
My apologies to Mr. Lamb. I didn't mean to jump into that, but it was getting into the affordable housing arena, which I know is not an area that we've had him that involved in yet. Your time will come.
Seeing no other commissioners seeking to comment on this, I think we can close this study session for now. Thank you, Senior Planner Lamb, for your presentation on this. It was very informative. We look forward to following this as it moves through the process and hearing more as you have more information to bring us. So thank you. With that, then we would move to the next agenda item, unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business, Director Cotterman?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chair, but it's been a few meetings since I've been here, so.
Yeah, it's been a while. All right, reports from staff then. Do we have reports from staff?
I have numerous reports from staff tonight, Mr.
Since it's
Chair.
been a few meetings, yes.
It has been a few meetings, yes. So it's nice to see you all again. I hope you enjoyed the summer break. And I also wanted to thank Mr. Lamb for running the meetings and staffing those while I was away. And you'll probably be seeing more of him and also Mr. Boyd doing that in the future. So I will miss seeing you on those Wednesdays, but know that I'm always with you in spirit here. So just wanted to update you on several things that have been happening over the last couple of months while we've been in recess for the Planning Commission. I think you're all aware of most of these, but just in case, want to get everybody on the same page. So the council has taken some really important actions related to some things that the Planning Commission has been working on that I did want to alert you to. Last night, they approved unanimously the GDC code amendments. including the affordable housing requirements and the MFTE that went along with the up zone, the increase in capacity, I should say, for the GDC in those areas. They did not make any changes. As I said, there was some good discussion. They were, excuse me, they were also, the council was very complimentary and appreciative of the work of the Planning Commission in working through this, what they saw as potentially, a very challenging and difficult issue with pros and cons and positions on both sides. And they really appreciated the work of the commission to come up with what they thought was a very reasonable and workable approach to that. They adopted your recommendation fully. Back in July, they adopted the multifamily tax exemption program, which I realize is not something that came through the commission because it's not in that section of the code that's within your purview, but obviously it's very important to the commission and the work that you do, and as evidenced by all the discussion we've had even this evening about affordable housing. So we're very happy to have that enacted, and it goes into effect, I believe, early next week. So we will, that will be available. It applies to all multifamily zones throughout the city. So it has very broad reach and very broad potential. And we've set some pretty good affordability levels in different areas. And in where we have affordable housing required, those mandatory provisions, they're able to be used in conjunction with them, as we talked about through the GDC. So we're hoping to see some units generated from that activity. Also, last night, as Commissioner Gustafson referenced, the council unanimously approved a resolution, the Health Through Housing, initiative that King County has going. This is through the sales tax, the special sales tax that was enacted by the state legislature that the county has taken advantage of, and they'll use those funds for affordable housing, also to address, there are a few things that the monies can be used for, but one of them is to address chronic homelessness. And this particular program involves the county purchasing buildings, typically hotels, that they're converted then into permanent supportive housing type facilities that can help the chronically homeless get off the streets and into stable living and improve their lives for the long term. Also, this recently, in fact, just this week, the city closed on the sale for Block D. So that is now in private ownership. And that project does have site plan approval and is currently going through building permit review. And construction is expected to begin, I believe, sometime after the first of the year. I see a question.
I'm not quite sure how to ask this, but there was a lot of community feedback about the design that was shared for Lot D initially. Did anything significantly change on that, or was the city just not able to really force any change because of our code at this point?
Well, I appreciate the question. It's a little hard to quantify significantly. That it's a little bit subjective. They did change the design as a result of the staff review and input. We went through, I think, 3 different reviews, separate reviews on that. And my personal feeling is, and I wasn't directly involved in the review, that it has improved significantly since the first design that we saw. We asked them and they responded to several of the comments that we had about beefing up the architecture of the building, using more of the materials that the council had said they like to see downtown. So there's a little bit more brick involved, less of the panel type. Apologies to Commissioner Westerbeck. I don't have the architectural terms for all of those. They're creating a little bit more attention to gateway design, particularly at the corner of 522 and Bothell Way. There's an outdoor seating area, sort of a kiosk area, and some signage and landscaping on that corner, which help to draw the eye to that and create more attention to that entrance into the downtown. They also have an area along 522 where the parking structure portion of the building is exposed, which is not allowed under the code. And there were different ways that that could be addressed. And what we ultimately came to agreement on with them is that they would do an artwork on that side of the building. So that will be prominent on the 522 side. We do not have any say over what the design of that artwork is, other than to make sure that it addresses the requirement of the code. So I just want to be very clear about that. I know a lot of the public comment we received, I think there was some feeling that because the city owned the property that we had more say over the design of the building, which is not the case. But we did do our normal review, and we put them through the paces to get what we felt is the best that we could get through that. So I hope the public appreciates and likes the design of the building. That's very subjective, so I'm sure some will and some won't. But we think we ended up with something much better than where we started with the project.
That's really great to hear. Slight follow-up, and then I think I'm done. So I before the August break, I feel like there was some discussion in council when this was discussed about maybe it was council conversations about maybe codifying some more pieces that we'd like to see in future developments on those, not even just city-owned lots, but in downtown, in our, the heart of our city right there. Is that something that council is going to pursue? Has that become an action item for, I don't know if that would be community development, or like, is anything going to come of that at this point?
That is community development, and that would be something that would be part of the council's discussion when we do the annual docket. So if that's, and again, the planning commission has input into that. So if that's something the planning commission wants to highlight for the council, I think most of the discussion, as I recall, was really around the city-owned property, primarily the remaining gateway property at EFG, and making sure that we maybe put some more things. There are a couple of ways that could be addressed. One is through code changes, which would apply obviously to more properties downtown. The other is, this sounds contrary to what I just said about not controlling the design of Block D because we own it. We can, as the owner, we could put stipulations when we sell the property. We could put some additional design requirements on it at that time. The decision on Block D, the decision was made to maximize the value, the sale value, and the net dollar benefit, revenue benefit to the city. So those stipulations were not, restrictions were not put on that block. But the council, or the city manager at that time could decide that they want to see more stipulations on E, F, and G. So that'd be another way to go. But I'm sure it will come up again in the docket discussion.
Okay, this is my last one, I promise, because it's still really though, so I'm going to jump back in.
That's why we're here.
So, and I thought I was doing so good not having as many questions on the TDR presentation, but so I guess, is it possible that EFG would be put up for sale? Like, so we would need to wait for the docket for next year if it's just attached to selling the property. So I guess if I have strong feelings about this, or if anybody watching anywhere has strong feelings about this, it just to contact the council and be like, hey, FYI, don't forget about this thing that you guys talked about. That would be like the appropriate way to follow up.
As an individual citizen, you can do any follow-up you want with the city council. If the commission as a group wants to highlight that in the docket for the council, you can do that when we bring that to you in December and or January.
Okay.
So
is EFG close to being put up for sale that you know of, or is it quite a ways away?
No, the most recent information that I've heard on that is that there's still quite a bit of contamination that needs to be addressed on that site. So that's probably the last of the sites that the city owns that will be put up for sale.
Yes, that part of it. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
Don't see that happening anytime soon.
Thanks.
Commissioner Westerbeck and then Commissioner Alders.
This is a follow-up to Commissioner Dodd's question, because the questions about the remaining city lots are near and dear to me. I have talked with council members, suggested the Planning Commission can be involved in this as well. A lot of cities in the United States, as well as other countries, do put together a package of what they'd like to see on their lots. They go above and beyond what the code requires. And then they say, please submit RFPs, propose developers. And you know about how this process works, I'm sure. Kenmore did it pre-recession for their city property lot, or city property that got developed with the hangar and so forth. And they had to, shift gears after the recession, but they had 3 or 4 developers teams propose, and then they had public meetings and got to choose the best one, and they had a pretty good one chosen, and then it all blew up. I really think Bothell should be looking at that so we can get a higher level of development, much like what we're seeing in Woodinville and some other cities, so that they have to think about the long-term city and public realm a lot more. And I think that's the purview of the Planning Commission too. We're getting, large developers who are doing a good job of making themselves rich and pumping money out of the city. And, they're allowed to do that, but we don't have to help them with that. We can say, hey, we want a really good civic realm too, and you get to make money. Let's do both. So it'd be encouraging if before we sold those, if we got to be involved with crafting a sort of plan for that to happen, and with council's blessing, of course, and or have that conversation at least. So I really think there's enormous future for those city lots. We can do so much with them. We could get so much more out of them, but we have to ask for what we want. So there we go.
And that is another approach that has been used.
So was there another question, Commissioner Alders?
Had a
Thank you. Jenny Aldrich's here. My question is about the plans for Lot D, those design changes that were submitted. Are those publicly available, and how does the public get to take a look at those since they've been approved by the city?
All of those materials are available to the public. They are public records, and I believe what we may have, let me check real quick here, because we actually set up.
I'm on a list where they send them out. So they've been sending them out to anyone who asks to be on email. So
do you recall if they're posted? Because I at one point I thought we were posting.
They are posted. They are posted on, you guys put out a link to OneDrive and you can access them all that way. I don't have it pulled up at the moment, but they are.
And I'm looking at our, I won't let me.
You can see if I have the link available for Commissioner Aldrich's.
Do you recall where that link is, Commissioner? On the city's website?
I got it via email, and now I'm trying to figure out who sent it to me because it's someone at the city.
You were probably on a distribution list. So
yeah.
I think it came out from probably from the planner, Kirsten.
It's from Planner Mant, I believe.
Yeah, from Kirsten. Yeah.
Kirsten, yeah.
So I will, I'll make sure that those get out to the Planning Commission. I'm pretty sure there's a link somewhere on the website, but I can't swear to that, and I can't find it right now, and I don't want to take up everyone's time looking for it, because this week I have not been successful at finding things that I'm looking for on the web.
I just found the email from Planner Mant, and so
if you would send that to me, and I will make sure that gets out to the commissioners. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I could get it from Kirsten, but this will probably be quicker, and I don't have to bother her. Did you have another question, Commissioner Aldrich, on that?
No, thank you. It was just so that the public could get get a look at it and make sure that that's easily accessible. Because also, here, follow-up question. How's that? How would the public go about getting on the distribution list that Carrie is on? And Carrie, would you like to describe how you did that?
I wish I could tell you. I believe, no, I think I recall Kirsten Mant, the planner at the city. It was some platform. It might have been.
I believe it was anyone who provided comments.
Yeah,
was automatically added to that list, or anyone who requested to be on the list was able to do that.
That's right. I'm trying to remember how we got notified of making comments, and I can't recall.
Well, there's initial notification sent out about the project, and I think that's what generated the initial response to it. And then we also provided more information publicly. That's one project we went above and beyond what we normally do, and what we're required to do. because there was a lot of public interest in it. So we made sure that anytime there was a submittal, that information was made available to the public. And the comments that we received, our planner Mant Kirsten responded to all of those comments, and also made sure that all of those comments were provided to the applicant as well.
There was a brief story in the Bothell Bridge, which went out by email today on this, but it was, I'll say, a little light on detail, but it did give an update.
Yeah, and I think that was more about the sale of the property
Yeah.
closing. So, and that's over 350 dwelling units on that. And I want to say, I won't have the square footage right. There is commercial square footage on the ground floor along Bothell Way that's required. And I think there's some that wraps around a little bit on either end of that.
There was also reference to the what I'll call the Bothell Ski and Bike property, and that one moving forward with the senior housing that we talked about on the commission
Yes,
a while ago.
right. There were some code amendments that the commission recommended on that one. That was also on my list to let you know about. So that sale also closed, I think, about a month ago. And that's for 76 all affordable senior housing. And some of those, I believe, are at 30%. They're the 30% to 80%, 30 to 50% AMI range. So, and they are also currently in building permit review. So we'll be seeing some construction going on downtown in the very near future. I believe I saw Commissioner Dodd's hand go up again.
I was just going to say I read the bridge piece, and I think it was around 9,600 square feet of retail.
Thank you. That sounds about right. Anything else on those? Because I got a few more things on my list here. I don't want to cut off questions. These are all good questions. I appreciate
Please continue.
the back and forth. One of the other things that the council did at their September 7th council meeting at staff's recommendation, the commission may recall when COVID first started, there were a couple of interim ordinances that were put in place. One of them temporarily suspended any expiration of permits or permit applications for 6 months, which is what we can do on an interim ordinance. That was extended twice. So it's been in effect now for a year and a half. And the staff recommended and the council approved terminating that particular interim ordinance, but we're phasing it out. Otherwise, it would just stop on September 15th, and we didn't want to do that to everybody, least of all staff, because that would create a lot of consternation and concerns on the part of some of our applicants, I'm sure. So they've extended that particular provision through the end of this year. So as of December 31st of this year, anything that would have expired by December 31st will expire unless they request a renewal or an extension under city code, which most projects are allowed to do. Certain ones, if they've already gone through that, wouldn't be able to, but for the most part, any of them can apply for that. Otherwise, their permits will expire. In order to encourage applicants who may fall under that to apply sooner rather than later for any extensions, we have created a one-time only deal through the end of November where they can get for a flat fee of $168, they can submit their application for an extension or renewal as long as they do it by the end of November. And that gives us time then to make sure that we can process those as many as we can before the end of the year, so that they wouldn't be suspended. Basically, they wouldn't go away if they've applied, they'd be suspended. So that's what we've put in place. So that particular interim ordinance will be phasing out by the end of the year. After November 31st, they can still apply for an extension or renewal, but they would have to pay whatever the fee amount is in the code. And of course, if they have an application or permit currently that doesn't expire until sometime after December 31st, that will continue to go to whenever it would have normally been terminated. So I probably didn't explain that very well, but just hopefully you understand we're phasing that part out. Thank you. One of the reasons that we felt we could that it was timely to do that is because our volume of development activity, our permit activity, has been very high. We are running close to some record numbers like we had in 2018. We are running ahead of 2020, which is not too surprising, although frankly, 2020, other than probably March, April, and May, we saw a drop off. But after that, things started picking up again, and they really haven't slowed down. And if anything, they're still continuing to increase. So that's all good news on one side. The downside is staff is running 90 miles an hour pretty much full time, just trying to keep up with things, and we are falling behind on some reviews. But we're working on getting caught up on those. But the good news is that we've got a lot of activity going on in the city. Council last night also extended the closure of Main Street through the end of March of 2022. So they're still considering the potential for permanent closure. They're looking for additional information. Staff is looking to provide some additional information and analysis as well. So that will come back to the council probably sometime after the first of the year. The appeal, I think I sent out an email, I believe, to let everyone know that the appeal to the Growth Hearings Board of the Canyon Park Subarea Plan and Development Regulations was determined that sorry, end of the day, my mouth's not keeping up with my brain. The hearings board found in favor of the city on every single issue on the appeal. So good work to the commission. You did everything you were supposed to. The consultants did everything they were supposed to. We met all the requirements, and the Growth Hearings Board recognized that. So that was very gratifying to get that decision out of the hearings board. That was issued on August 16th. The appellants, the Canyon Park Business Owners Association, has 30 days from that decision in which to file an appeal of the Growth Hearings Board decision to Superior Court. That, I believe, ended at 5 o'clock today. I have not heard that they have filed a further appeal, but that may yet come tomorrow. I'm not sure. So we'll keep you posted on that. If they do, that would then be combined with the other appeal they had already filed in Superior Court on the planned action ordinance. That particular appeal was stayed pending the outcome of the hearings board decision. So that one is still out there at this point in time. At least that one. We'll see what happens with others. Stay tuned there. The City Hall reopening. As you all know, we were hoping to get things back to semi-abnormal sometime after Labor Day. We were prepared to do that. Unfortunately, with the uptick in the Delta variant, we made the decision not to do that, as have most other jurisdictions and major employers in the area. Rather than set another date and have to move that, we have opted to just say, we're going to continue to monitor, and we will see when we think it's safe to reopen City Hall, at least even on a part-time basis or a partial basis. And we're still hoping to do that sometime before the end of the year, but your guess is as good as mine or anybody else's at this point as to when that'll happen. But we will notify the public, and we'll give staff 2 weeks notice about that, so that we're ready now, and we're going to remain ready to do that. We just want to make sure that we give everybody a little bit of time to make arrangements for in their personal lives to be able to come in. And we wouldn't be bringing everybody back in on a full-time basis in any case. We'd most likely be staggered staffing. Commissioner Aldrichs, did I see your hand?
Yeah, Jenny Aldrichs here. You did, and you answered my question. It was how much warning will there be before shifting back into in-person? So thank you.
Yep, thank you. And then finally, just to let you know, we have a new employee in the department who's actually already in the department. So let me explain that. We had a retirement in the department. Julie Ewick, who was our administrative services manager. I don't know if you know Julie, but she retired. Congratulations to Julie. And her position was filled internally. There was a promotion of Debbie Watkins to that position. So that opened up Debbie's position, which is an administrative assistant position. And what I have done is I've reconfigured that position. So it's not a new position, it's one that we had existing. And I've reconfigured that and reclassified it into a community engagement specialist. And that is to really help us do a much better job of outreach to the community on the projects that we do, not just for long range planning, but also for our other projects as well. And to really be able to tell the story and to have regular and consistent communications with all the different groups out in the community. Obviously, there's an emphasis with all the DEI work that the city is doing, and we'll be working closely with our DEI consultant on that. So we want to make sure that we're engaging those traditionally underrepresented communities that are out there. And this is also primarily in preparation for our comprehensive plan update that Mr. Lamb will be heavily involved with as the manager of that process. So looking forward to introducing her to you at a future meeting. I haven't made the official announcement yet to the rest of the city, so that's her identity will remain a secret until tomorrow at least.
Commissioner Dodd?
Thanks. I just wanted to say thank you, Director Cotterman. That change and reconfiguration of the position sounds so appropriate for a lot of the stuff that the commission has talked about and that the city has talked about. So I really appreciate seeing some of that in action in the department that we work so closely with. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's certainly a need that we've identified a while ago, and it's one that we have not really been able to meet. And one of the first things that I'm going to have her do is update our web presence and give us more of a presence in social media. So, it's going to take us a while to get up to speed on everything, but she's got a lot of great ideas and has a lot of skills that I think are going to really help us do a much better job of developing those relationships with the broader community and having much better communications. And like I said, being able to tell our story and what we're doing so that people know what's going on and know what they want to get engaged in. And I believe that was my entire list, Mr. Chair. So thank you for all the questions and thank you for your patience as I work through all of those.
Well, thank you. As we've noted, it's been a while since we met, so those were very interesting updates. We thank you for them. Our next item is reports from members. Anyone want to say what they did on their summer vacation? Commissioner Curd.
No, I don't want to say that, but I do have a report as per usual. I'm going to keep it short, but I learned that the city of Bothell maintains over 8,000 storm drains. And in less than 2 weeks from today, the official start of the wet season in our city begins per the code, not only in accordance with the calendar. And so I encourage everyone who's listening or who might be interested in planning and community development to direct their attention to the Adopt a Drain program that we have that Public Works is putting on, and they can use all the help they can get cleaning and clearing storm drains to prevent urban flooding in our city. So I hear this weekend might be a stress test. So if there are any pine needles or leaf litter in your storm drains that are near your houses or where you live, please clean them out and look to the website for more information. Thanks.
Thank you for that announcement. Director Cotterman, you have a comment?
Well, first of all, on behalf of Public Works, thank you, Commissioner Curd, for that public service announcement. I'm sure they appreciate it. And also one thing I forgot to mention, so I know some of you are APA, American Planning Association members, so you've probably been notified already. But for those of you who have not, we're doing Washington chapter is doing a joint conference with the Oregon chapter this year. We have an annual state conference. This year it's a joint conference with Oregon, October 13th through the 15th, I believe. So early bird registrations through the end of this month. We technically don't have any planning training money set aside for the Planning Commission, but if any of you are interested and you're not able or interested in paying for that on your own, please let me know. I will send out a link to the information. You can look it over, and if you are interested, let me know, and we'll see if we can come up with some funding to help you attend that conference. Sorry, I forgot to mention that sooner.
And other commissioners, updates for the group. Commissioner Gustafson.
Thank you, Chair. Sarah Gustafson here. I wanted to share a piece of what I think is very good news from Bellevue. In the Eastgate area, there was a groundbreaking on a community supportive housing campus that has 92, it's called the Eastgate Supportive Housing Campus. It has 92 apartments for folks who've been chronically unhoused. It has a 100-bed shelter, and it has 353 affordable housing units, which is amazing. And since Director Cotterman used to work with Bellevue, I didn't know if he had any insight to share on how the community got on board or any other insight on how this was created.
Mr. Chair?
I've got a little story there. That property was purchased by the King County Solid Waste Division in 1989 for a transfer station. I was engineering services manager at the time. It was not developed for that purpose. And in fact, the transfer station is downhill from that. And the property did become surplus. I've been away from the department for a number of years when the change in planned use came, but that's how the property came into county ownership. And I don't know if Director Cotterman has any more to say about the rest of the story.
A little bit, but not as a former Bellevue employee. Actually, in another life, I'm on the board of directors for Congregations for the Homeless, which is the entity that's building the 100-bed shelter for men experiencing homelessness. So yes, that's been in the works for a long time. The organization has been working with the city and others, King County in particular, to locate and then purchase the property. The original focus was just for the shelter, because we've been trying to build a shelter on the east side for probably about 20 years now. As far as the community engagement, there was a very active and vocal opposition to locating a shelter anywhere on the east side. And we went through a lengthy process with the city of Bellevue to come up with some code amendments that created a process for the public to have some input. They created what they call a good neighbor advisory committee that is working with the applicants. So Congregations for the Homeless is one of the applicants. We're for the shelter. Plymouth Housing is doing the permanent supportive housing facility. You mentioned the 91, 92 apartments. And then the 300, I forget what the exact number is, the 350 or so units of workforce housing is being built by the Inland Group out of Spokane. They've done other projects like this. So it became a much bigger partnership than it initially was started out to be, and created that campus. So the property purchase was finalized, I believe, just a month or two ago. That's been in negotiations for a while, and it's currently going through the city's approval process for permits. So I believe construction is supposed to start sometime next year, and it's been a long time coming, but a very exciting project and one that's sorely needed, particularly on the east side.
Well, congratulations, and thanks to you both for being involved and leaders on this.
Thank
It
you.
is a very short distance from the Eastgate Park and Ride too.
Correct. That's one of the
Just down the
reasons
road.
for the location. Yeah, one of the other sites that was being looked at was at the public health facility, just the other side of that. And that's what generated a lot of the public opposition to locating the shelter. And I will credit the city staff and the shelter staff with doing a tremendous amount of outreach to the community and having regular meetings with them to try to address their concerns and explain just what all of this is about and what it's not about. There's a lot of misperception and misunderstanding about how shelters work, and particularly about people that are experiencing homelessness, and how important it is to create those shelters, because you can't provide services and you're not going to help them get out of homelessness unless you can get them into a shelter and provide some type of stable stable, secure sleeping environment and hopefully living environment. That's outside of my day job.
All right, other reports from commissioners. Commissioner Alders.
Thank you. Jenny Alders here. I will wrap up previous updates in saying that I was awarded the public leadership credential from Harvard University. I completed my study, my course of study there. So wrap that up. Thank you.
Congratulations. Anyone else? Anything else for the good of the order? Seeing no further business, entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Up, Commissioner Dodd.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Ooh, right ahead of me. Commissioner Alders.
I second the motion.
All in favor? So we have unanimous approval to adjourn the meeting. The Planning Commission is adjourned by my computer at 7:47 this evening. Thank you all for your participation, and our next meeting will be October 6th. See you then.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see
All
you.
right, good night.
All right, good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.